So for our drawing assignments, I'm not expecting ANSI or ASME Y14.5 dimensioning and tolerancing standard to the nth detail. Understand the process is what I'm going for. My expectation is that you will be able to insert your assemblies and parts, put notes, details, the bill of materials, the balloon callouts. It sounds like a lot, but it's pretty straightforward and quite easy. So since I closed the insert, just like all of the rest of our modules, got to have 5 ways to do everything. If I go back into model view, that will bring in um, the property manager, and I can browse. And notice that it went back to the SolidWorks template location. So I need to get to my document and pull up the assembly file. Okay, so once it locates that, it's going to bring in the front view, so all of the standard views. And for this, I'm just going to, for the assembly, I want the one view. And we'll worry about the exploded view here in a minute. But display styles, if you are actually going to print this out, keeping in mind that ink and toner is $1,000 a gallon, don't put it in shaded. Just my personal preference. We're going to use a standard sheet scale. It's going to kind of depend on the size of the part, and it should automatically scale. Dimension types, projected or true for anything that's an isometric. Cosmetic thread display for draft. If we need something more at this point, we'll pick those up. And let's go ahead and place the first isometric view. And then I want to create the exploded view, so if I Control C, click out a little bit and hit Control V, it's just going to make a duplicate view. And let's see, I think the table's probably just kind of thinking about what size I'm going to get. Let's see, that one's not highlighting for some reason. There we go. Graphics card's a little, well, everything's a little slow today. So I want this to go into the exploded view. So clicking on that view, I can change it into the exploded state. We just did that simple. If you did one of the more complex, that's fine. All right, so with that highlighted, then I'm going to go into, let's see, let's go ahead and right click. And towards the bottom, you will see tables, and I want a bill of materials. That's going to be a list of all the parts. Depending on the complexity of the assembly, top level parts only indented. So if we have assembly, sub-assembly parts, sub-sub-assembly parts, it will detail all of that out, and then we have to figure out how to manage it. So I'm going to stay with the bill of materials standard and place it. If I decide I don't need the description, I can right click and remove that column by deleting and selecting the column. That will shrink it down a little bit. And then way back when I set those configurations, the long pin and the short pin were set to be the configuration name, not the part name. If you brought those in individually as parts, then you wouldn't have to really worry about that. And the drawn by, not sure where that came from, so it pulled up an assembly. So let's go into the sheet format. So either that or I had a leftover. Yep, I had a leftover. P5-16 assembly. So what that's probably doing is there's not enough room and it did not open up. So I'm having a hard time seeing this. So I'm not real fond of the, at least initially, I'm not real fond of SolidWorks's color changes here. And that's not stretching out to show the size. So, well, there we go. So maybe I'll have to go back into the sheet format and clean that up a little bit. Yeah, I think that's going to get an enhancement request. I'm not sure where that gets set up, but if you're encountering that, that's kind of annoying. All right, so our first sheet, and then I like to go through. Well, let's go ahead and do the balloon callouts. We'll get this one wrapped up. So under the annotations, we'll go with the auto balloon. And with auto balloon, I have to tell it the direction. So maybe we'll put everything off to the side. And that looked pretty good while I could see it. So we'll go ahead and hit OK. And then I'm going to drag the magnet line in and around a little bit, get a little closer together. And except for item 6 there, if I drag it down and away, well, that's still crossing over. Drag 2 down a little bit. So not great, not bad. We can refine that a little bit as we go. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Now your choice is to one sheet, one part. I still tend to prefer drawing packages. And so the purpose of adding the second sheet format was now I can either go back to drawing and model view. See anything under the right click? No. We can drag and drop from the File Explorer, but I don't have anything open, so we'd have to, well, yeah, I do. All right, so this is a good explanation of what happens when a document is open. So in this case, the drawing is associated referencing the assembly and all of the parts, and those are showing in gray. And even though they are not open documents, they are open in memory. So we just did the assembly, so I would like to have the base. If I drag and drop the base, then I can come over and tell it, I'm not sure what views I will need, so I go ahead and tell it all 3 views. And display states, those all look pretty good, so go ahead and hit OK. And it shows me the preview. And we'll move that off of the way a little bit. Alright, so again, my personal preferences and the drawing file name. Yeah, going to have to go in and correct that and in the sheet format. So we'll go ahead and add another sheet. Let's see, if I go this time, I could continue to go to the File Explorer. If my Windows Explorer is open in the Create folder, in the correct folder, let's see, which one would we want next? Maybe the crank. So I can drag and drop the crank, and it should go right into projected view if I haven't confused it. Okay, there we go. We got the model view. Don't think I'm going to need all 3 views for that one, but again, we can change those if needed. Now these were all separate parts, so I shouldn't see anything in the way of configurations. We'll add another one. So let's see, another method is we'll come up to the view palette, see where it points to. So we did the crank, let's go with the coupler. And it's going to show me the preview views. And again, would like to have a thickness. There's nothing really in the top view, I think, that's going to help me there. So we'll kind of compare it to the previous. And I'm dragging out on the projection to the isometric. And we go ahead and hit OK. And so what my title block is missing, and this is part of that iterative process, is we have the file name, but then I also need the part name that's detailed. So we have the drawing and then the part, and I can make those adjustments and hopefully get that spacing squared away. And then we'll, since I already have the view palette open, I will go to the follower. and drag in the front view, kind of like the side view. And so any view that's not specifically going to get a dimension, we don't really need to include it. Let's go one more. And ready for the pins. Okay, bring in the pin. And maybe I'll do that as an example, and on the next one, let's see, we'll go over here to the isometric. So if I bring something in, I could have picked better, and notice that the scaling is pretty small. We're going to correct that on the next pass. My reference configuration is the pin long, and then let's see, where do I get that? All right, so if I were to put this in the top view, change of orientation is going to warn me that any dimensions I've applied are going to be lost, which is always fun. So we want to do this early and make sure that we get these orientations before I go through and do a full detail and find out that, yeah, that wasn't quite what I wanted to do. So if I go back into the view palette, and we're still going to be bringing in the pin, but this time I'm going to bring in the top, and then when I drag it into its next and the isometric, now I have pretty much the same thing. Because this is a configuration, and we were set to the long, now I'm going to set it to the short. All right, so going through and setting the scales, in the bottom right, I can go 1:1. Could still be a little bit bigger, so if I look through my list, let's go 2:1. That's a little more visual. And since I don't have a scale listed down here, that's something that I need to add to my list of items for the sheet format and the drawing template. So since we did that, let's go ahead and do that one at 2:1. And so that, without having to catch all those numbers or make the manufacturing machinists, fabricators do the math, or think that they're doing something really big when it's really small, or think they're doing something really small when it's really big. That scale and things like the mass help to quantify what it is that we put in place here. So 1:1, that looks pretty good. And we'll go back to the coupler. I don't know that we're going to be able, so this might be, because of the size, might have been better to have the top view, but we'll see what it looks like at 1:1. All right, and since the ISO is taking up a little bit, I can also go from the sheet size and over to the property manager for just that view, use a custom scale, and it can remain at 1/2. If I wanted to put a node in there, it might be advisable to have. No, I'm not getting there as my box, so I'm being a little impatient to have those boxes pop up. All right, so this one can go to 1:1. If I decide I don't want that view and I want to stay with my second selection, I can just highlight that view and hit delete on the keyboard. We'll pick that view and go to projected view on the drawing. When I drag it out, now it'll be consistent with the other drawing sheets. Sheet 3 overall is looking pretty good, so I think at this point I'm going to save and make sure that that's all connected, and then our next pass we will go through and start looking at dimensions.